So from the primary last night, we want to share with you a little bit of our findings right now for how Republicans were breaking down on the issues, and then a slice of Democrats, which might be a kind of a telling story for the White House. New Hampshire Republicans, voter analysis, most important issue facing the country. Far and away was the economy and jobs. The economy in New Hampshire always seems to pop really right near the top. But this year, not just the economy, but it was immigration. We mentioned this early in the show. Everywhere you went in this state, people talked about the border and immigration, so that was top of mind for Republicans. Let me flip you over here to New Hampshire Democrats. These are voters under the age of 45 now. Who did they support? Remember, Joe Biden was a write-in candidate. His name was not on the ballot. If you wanted to vote for him, you had to write in physically his name. He got 43% of the vote from those under age 45. But look where Dean Phillips scored, almost 30%. This is a little-known congressman from the western suburbs of Minneapolis, Minnesota, who's been pounding the pavement up here in New Hampshire, finished with a little bit about 21% of the vote here, which might be a surprise as well. But under 45, just something to keep in mind about where the youth in the Democratic Party are centered right now in this campaign. Let's cruise on back over here with my partner, Dana, and we'll bring in Katie Pavlich to address this.
Well, yeah, let's just talk about this and get right into it in terms of the youth vote. Did you see anything, trends between Iowa and New Hampshire, or is it too soon to tell?
I think it's too soon to tell. It's interesting to watch the Biden-Phillips thing play out because it's similar, I think, to the Bernie Sanders-Biden matchup that we saw previously in elections. Young people generally want to be rebels. They want something different. They also tend to be liberals. So while they're not going to necessarily vote for Republicans, they want to try and go against the grain and find someone who's more in line with either what they believe in or someone who just breaking what's conventional wisdom for what Democrats are trying to sell. They also like Dean Phillips because he's younger, he's presenting a different point of view, and so the Biden campaign is doing everything they can to try and rope in those younger voters, including a lot of the super PACs that are supporting the Biden team.
You know, you come to these events, and some things surprise you and some things don't. Unfortunately, I think a lot of the latter is how it plays out. But I think maybe we could argue how the vote came in on the Republican side last night. You know, it held some drama. And I think you make the same case for the Democratic side. We didn't really know this write-in vote was going to go. But I think in terms of commentary among the candidates, the only thing that sticks out to me is not, Nikki Haley's dress. It's how Dean Phillips talked about the MAGA crowd. For the rally that he went to over the weekend up in Rockingham County. He made a point to say that on Fox. Yep. And he made a point to talk about that on CNN.
Yeah. Right. He's going for the Jamie Dimon vote.
He is. You know, it's interesting because if you look at the electorate generally, all age groups, there are more people than ever getting away from the political parties and saying that they're independent. Now, of course, they have either left-leaning or right-leaning. But people are kind of disillusioned with the party system. And so when you have someone like Dean Phillips saying, we want to humanize people again, we don't want to be talking to them like MAGA's some kind of curse word or that, they are the same as we believe that President Trump is, he's learning that Hillary Clinton did not do well when she called Trump supporters a basket of deplorables. When you have 75 million people who voted for the former president and you're putting them in this box like the Biden team has, it doesn't really hit people in the way that they think that you're going to be uniting the country in a way that they feel they can move forward.
I apologize to interrupt you. We're going to get this other topic. I would just say, keep that moment in mind as a data point as we move through this primary season there. Go ahead.
And keep this one in mind because you might have missed this yesterday with all the things happening in New Hampshire. There was a Biden event in Virginia. The Virginia governor is Glenn Youngkin. We know him well, but here is what President Biden said.
Hello, Virginia. And the real governor, Terry McAuliffe.
And Terry McAuliffe was the governor. Glenn Youngkin tweeted this: Mr. President, I'm right here.
And then Tommy Tuberville, the senator of Alabama, said, I thought saying something like this was a, quote, threat to democracy. Right. This man doesn't have a speck of integrity.
Yeah, he's an election denier.
You had the White House and the Biden team heavily criticizing anybody who may question elections. And there you have President Biden going to Virginia and talking about abortion, and then calling the real governor, former Governor Terry McAuliffe, when Glenn Youngkin is the Republican governor of that state. He is very popular. He has a 54% approval rating that has gone up by 5 points since August 2023.
Or did the president just get confused?
Well,
did he actually think, Governor McAuliffe.
I mean, he said is the real governor, so I would say he knows that Glenn Youngkin is the governor. They have been heavily criticizing Glenn Youngkin over the course of the past year, especially when it came to the elections that he was heavily involved in leading up to the November elections last year. And so they know who he is. I don't think it was confusing this time.
I thought the other thing about that event, I was just reading about it last night. This is all about abortion and women's rights. And this is really, I mean, the White House, I think they were smart yesterday. They launched their general election campaign. But at that event, there were at least a dozen interruptions from people talking about Gaza and the war in the Middle East. And that's something, just a quick comment on that, that's something that as long as this battle continues throughout the Middle East, it's going to be an issue.
Well, look, there's been a lot of talk about Republicans. Obviously, there's a primary going on in the split in the party, but Democrats also have a giant split, especially when it comes to foreign policy on the issue of the Israel-Gaza war. It is alarming to see the stance that a lot of Democrats have. 50% of the party coming out, and the data that we have say that they disapprove of the way that Joe Biden has handled that situation, given that he supported the only democracy in the Middle East, the only place that has freedom for women and people who want to live the lives that they do as themselves. And so that is a problem for the Biden White House, and they've seen it. And they've actually, the president, I think, has a trip planned to Detroit to try and talk to Muslim voters about how they can handle this situation in terms of polling.
We'll see how that goes.
In the meantime, the interns have sent a strongly worded letter.
They have, and they didn't protest because it was too cold.
Yes,
they also threatened to walk out, but it was snowing, so they decided to do that a different day.
Hang on, Katie, we got something for you.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.